Picture this: a city where three-wheeled rickshaws painted in vibrant colors weave through streets packed with over 23 million people, where the call to prayer echoes from countless minarets 5 times a day, and where a 400-year-old neighborhood holds secrets that most travelers never discover. This is Dhaka, the beating heart of Bangladesh, a country that emerged from one of the most dramatic independence struggles of the 20th century. But here's what catches you completely off guard. Hidden within the chaotic maze of Old Dhaka lies a history so rich and complex that it rivals any ancient city you've ever heard of. What transformed this region from being the wealthiest part of the Mughal Empire into one of the most densely populated places on Earth? How did a nation younger than your parents become home to 170 million people? And what exactly happens inside the narrow alleys of Old Dhaka that tourists rarely witness? The story begins not with modern Bangladesh, but centuries ago, when Dhaka was known as Jahangir Nagar, named after the Mughal Emperor Jahangir. In 1608, the Mughals made this city their provincial capital, and what followed was an explosion of wealth that would make Dhaka legendary across Asia. The city became famous for something extraordinary: muslin fabric so fine that entire saris could be pulled through a wedding ring. This wasn't just any textile. European traders called it woven air because of its almost transparent delicacy. A single piece could cost more than $3,000 in today's money, and the secret weaving technique was so closely guarded that it eventually died with the last master weavers in the 19th century. But that's just one layer of the mystery we're about to unravel. Fast forward to 1971, and Bangladesh was born from blood and determination. In just 9 months, a liberation war claimed an estimated 3 million lives and created 10 million refugees. What drove people to fight so fiercely for independence? The answer lies in language, identity, and a brutal suppression that ignited a revolution. Today, as we walk through the streets of Dhaka, every corner tells a story of resilience, transformation, and survival against impossible odds. Now, before we dive deeper into this fascinating journey through Bangladesh, we're exploring one of the most dynamic countries in South Asia, and creating these in-depth documentaries takes tremendous research and dedication. If you're enjoying this exploration, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss our documentaries about unique cultures and places around the world. Also, drop a comment telling us which country you're watching from. It's wonderful to have such a global community here, and we truly appreciate your support from wherever you are. Now let's continue discovering what makes Bangladesh so extraordinary. The transformation of Old Dhaka from Mughal glory to modern chaos is nothing short of dramatic. Today, this historic quarter houses approximately 400,000 people crammed into just 2 square kilometers, making it one of the most densely populated neighborhoods on the planet. That's roughly 200,000 people per square kilometer. Imagine the entire population of a medium-sized city living in an area smaller than New York's Central Park. The streets here are so narrow that in many places, 2 rickshaws can barely pass each other. Buildings lean into each other, creating tunnels of architecture that block out the sun. And yet, life thrives in these shadows in ways that will surprise you. What pulls people into these cramped quarters? Why does Old Dhaka continue to pulsate with energy despite the emergence of modern Dhaka just kilometers away? The answer connects to trade, tradition, and a way of life that has persisted for 4 centuries. Here, you'll find something rare in our modern world: communities where families have practiced the same trade for 15 generations. There are entire streets dedicated to single crafts. One alley produces nothing but traditional bamboo flutes. Another specializes in hand-painted rickshaw art, and yet another creates the most intricate gold jewelry using techniques unchanged since the Mughal era. But here's where the story gets truly intriguing. Hidden within Old Dhaka are structures that most travelers never see, places where history isn't preserved behind glass but lives and breathes in daily life. There are courtyards where merchants still conduct business exactly as their ancestors did in the 1600s. Mansions with crumbling facades that once housed nobility wealthier than European kings, and markets where trades are sealed with handshakes worth thousands of dollars, based purely on centuries-old trust systems. What other secrets does this ancient quarter hold? How do people actually live in these incredibly dense conditions? And most importantly, what happens when traditional ways of life collide with the unstoppable force of modernization? The answers are more fascinating than you could imagine, and they reveal something profound about human adaptability and cultural preservation. Bangladesh, officially the People's Republic of Bangladesh, occupies a unique position in South Asia, bordered by India on 3 sides and Myanmar to the southeast, with the Bay of Bengal stretching along its southern coast. This nation covers approximately 148,000 square kilometers, making it roughly the size of the state of Iowa, or slightly smaller than England and Wales combined. But here's the staggering part. Within this relatively small territory live 170 million people, creating a population density of about 1,150 people per square kilometer. To put that in perspective, if the entire United States had the same population density as Bangladesh, it would be home to over 11 billion people, more than the current world population. The capital and largest city, Dhaka, dominates the nation with a metropolitan population exceeding 23 million, making it one of the world's megacities. Chittagong, the second largest city and principal seaport, houses approximately 5 million people and serves as the commercial hub where the majority of the country's imports and exports flow through. Khulna, with around 1.5 million inhabitants, sits near the Sundarbans, the world's largest mangrove forest. Rajshahi in the northwest, home to about 850,000 people, is known for its silk production and mango groves. These cities form the backbone of a nation where urbanization is accelerating at breakneck speed, with approximately 500,000 people migrating to cities annually in search of opportunities. The geography of Bangladesh is defined almost entirely by water. The country sits on the world's largest river delta, the Ganges-Brahmaputra-Meghna Delta, where 3 massive river systems converge before emptying into the Bay of Bengal. Over 700 rivers and tributaries crisscross the landscape, creating a network of waterways that has shaped Bangladeshi life for millennia. During the monsoon season, which lasts from June to October, these rivers can swell dramatically, and it's not uncommon for 1/3 of the country to be underwater. The average elevation is just 85 meters above sea level, with much of the nation sitting barely above the high tide mark, making Bangladesh one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change and rising sea levels. The climate is tropical and humid, dominated by the monsoon cycle. Temperatures range from a comfortable 68 degrees Celsius, 20 degrees Celsius in winter, to a sweltering 95 degrees Celsius, 35 degrees Celsius, or higher during summer months. Annual rainfall varies dramatically across the country, from about 2,500 millimeters in the west to an astounding 5,000 millimeters in the northeast, particularly in areas like Sylhet. The port city of Chittagong has recorded rainfall of over 250 millimeters in a single day during particularly intense monsoons. This abundance of water creates incredibly fertile soil. The delta's sediment-rich land is perfect for agriculture, which is why Bangladesh has historically been called the breadbasket of Bengal. The name Bangladesh itself means land of Bengal, or more literally, country of Bengal, in the Bengali language. But the history behind this name reveals layers of identity, conquest, and transformation. The region was historically known as Bengal, a name derived from the ancient kingdom of Vanga, mentioned in Hindu texts dating back over 3,000 years. Throughout history, this land has been called by various names. Gangaridai by the ancient Greeks, Samatata and Harikela in ancient texts, Vanga in Sanskrit literature, and eventually Bangala during medieval times. For centuries, Bengal was one of the wealthiest regions in the world. During the Mughal period from the 16th to 18th centuries, Bengal's economy accounted for an estimated 12% of global GDP, comparable to all of Western Europe combined. The region was renowned for its textile production, particularly the legendary muslin cloth, as well as silk, rice, and spices. European traders fought fierce commercial battles for access to Bengali goods, and the saying went that the soil of Bengal is made of gold dust. This wealth made the region a target for colonial powers, and in 1757, the British East India Company defeated the Nawab of Bengal at the Battle of Plassey, beginning nearly 200 years of colonial rule that would drain the region's resources and fundamentally alter its destiny. The colonial period brought devastating famines, including the Bengal famine of 1943, which killed an estimated 3 million people, while rice continued to be exported to support the British war effort during World War II. When British India was partitioned in 1947, Bengal was split along religious lines. The western part became West Bengal, a state in the newly independent India, while the eastern part became East Pakistan, a province of the newly created Muslim-majority nation of Pakistan. But here's the crucial detail that connects directly to modern Bangladesh's story. Despite being part of the same country, East and West Pakistan were separated by over 1,600 kilometers of Indian territory, and the two regions shared little beyond religion. The Pakistani government, based in West Pakistan, treated the East as a colony rather than an equal partner. Bengali, the language spoken by the majority of Pakistan's total population, was denied official status in favor of Urdu, a language spoken by the Western elite, but by fewer than 10% of Pakistanis. Economic exploitation was systematic. East Pakistan generated 70% of Pakistan's export earnings, primarily from jute, but received only 25% of the budget allocation. Political power was monopolized by the West, and when East Pakistani candidates won the 1970 election, West Pakistan refused to honor the results. This sparked protests that led to a brutal military crackdown on March 25, 1971, known as Operation Searchlight. What followed was one of the bloodiest and most dramatic independence struggles of the 20th century. Over 9 months in 1971, the Liberation War raged, resulting in an estimated 1 to 3 million deaths, widespread atrocities, and the displacement of 10 million refugees who fled to India. India intervened militarily in December 1971, and within 2 weeks, Pakistani forces surrendered in Dhaka on December 16, 1971. Bangladesh was born as an independent nation, and this date is celebrated annually as Victory Day. The journey from colonial exploitation to independence forged a fierce national identity centered on Bengali language and culture, an identity that remains central to understanding Bangladesh today and connects intimately with the preservation of Old Dhaka's heritage. Standing at the edge of the Sundarbans, you're confronted with something that defies your expectations of what a forest should be. This isn't a collection of trees on solid ground. It's an entire ecosystem that exists between land and sea, where the boundaries blur and nature creates its own rules. The Sundarbans covers approximately 10,000 square kilometers across Bangladesh and India, with about 6,000 square kilometers on the Bangladeshi side, making it the largest mangrove forest on Earth. But what makes this place truly extraordinary isn't just its size. It's the fact that this entire forest rises and falls with the tides, submerging and re-emerging twice daily in a rhythm that has continued for thousands of years. Imagine paddling through channels where the water is a murky greenish-brown, thick with sediment carried down from the Himalayas over 2,000 kilometers away. The air is heavy with humidity, often reaching 90% or higher, making every breath feel substantial. The temperature hovers around 86 degrees, 30 degrees during the day, occasionally climbing to 95 degrees, 35 degrees, while at night it rarely drops below 77 degrees, 25 degrees C. As you move deeper into this aquatic forest, the distinctive smell hits you, a mix of salt water, decomposing vegetation, and the earthy richness of the mangrove mud, which can be up to 15 meters deep in some areas. The trees themselves are architectural marvels. Sundari trees, from which the forest gets its name, Sundarbans means beautiful forest, dominate the landscape, their roots extending above the waterline in tangled networks that trap sediment and create new land. These pneumatophores, breathing roots that emerge from the water like wooden fingers, allow the trees to survive in oxygen-poor mud. Some of these trees reach heights of 25 meters, their canopies creating a green ceiling that filters the harsh tropical sun into dappled patterns on the water below. Between the Sundari trees grow giwa and goran trees, along with dozens of other mangrove species, creating layers of vegetation so dense that visibility sometimes extends only 10 or 15 meters ahead. But what truly makes your heart race in the Sundar bands is the knowledge of what might be watching you. This forest is home to the largest population of Bengal tigers in the world, an estimated 100 to 150 individuals that have adapted to this aquatic environment in ways found nowhere else on Earth. These are swimming tigers, able to cover distances of up to 29 kilometers through the channels, hunting deer, wild boar, and even fish. Unlike tigers elsewhere, the Sundarbans tigers have developed a reputation for being particularly aggressive toward humans, with several attacks reported annually. The honey collectors and fishermen who work in these waters have developed unique precautions. Many wear masks on the back of their heads because tigers typically attack from behind, and the reverse face mask sometimes deters them. Beyond tigers, the Sundarbans teems with life that exists nowhere else. Saltwater crocodiles, some reaching lengths of 6 meters and weighing over 1,000 kilograms, patrol the deeper channels. Spotted deer move in herds through the flooded forest, their legs adapted for walking through knee-deep water. The muddy banks are alive with fiddler crabs, whose distinctive oversized claws create clicking sounds that echo through the forest. Overhead, over 300 species of birds make this their home, including the endangered masked finfoot and the spectacular white-bellied sea eagle with its 2-meter wingspan. During winter months, migratory birds from as far as Siberia join the resident population, creating a cacophony of calls that blend with the lapping of water and the rustle of leaves. Now travel north, away from the aquatic forests to the very different landscape of the Chittagong Hill Tracts in southeastern Bangladesh. This is the only significantly hilly region in the entire country, where the land rises dramatically from the Delta Plains to heights reaching 1,064 meters at Kiokradong, the country's highest point. Here, the air is noticeably cooler and less humid than the lowlands. Temperatures can drop to 50 degrees or 10 degrees during winter nights, a refreshing change in a country where cold is rare. The landscape is covered in dense tropical and subtropical forests, quite different from the mangroves, with teak, bamboo, and fruit trees creating a multi-layered canopy. The hill tracts cover approximately 13,000 square kilometers, about 10% of Bangladesh's total area, but they're home to numerous indigenous communities including the Chakma, Marma, Tripura, and Mru peoples, who maintain distinct cultures, languages, and traditions quite different from mainstream Bangladeshi culture. Villages cling to hillsides, connected by paths that wind through valleys where streams cascade over rocks worn smooth by countless monsoons. The region receives some of the heaviest rainfall in Bangladesh. The town of Rangamati can see up to 3,500 millimeters annually, creating waterfalls that appear during the monsoon season, the most impressive being the Nafakum Falls on the Ramakri River, where water plunges 25 meters over a series of rocky steps into a pool below that's a stunning turquoise color, contrasting sharply with the muddy rivers of the plains. What's particularly striking about the hill tracts is the contrast it presents. While the rest of Bangladesh is characterized by flatness, rivers, and density, this region offers hills, relative isolation, and a pace of life that feels like it belongs to a different country entirely. The vegetation here is so lush that during the monsoon you can almost watch it grow. Bamboo groves create natural tunnels, their stems reaching heights of 15-20 meters and so thick that walking through them feels like entering a natural cathedral. The air smells different here too, fresher, with the scent of wildflowers and the occasional waft of wood smoke from cooking fires in distant villages. But perhaps the most accessible natural wonder in Bangladesh is Cox's Bazar, which holds a record that surprises most people. It's home to the longest natural sandy sea beach in the world. Stretching for an unbroken 125 kilometers along the Bay of Bengal, this beach dwarfs famous beaches worldwide. It's more than twice the length of California's entire Big Sur coastline. The sand here is fine and golden, almost powder-like in texture, and during low tide, the beach can extend 200–300 meters wide, creating what looks like a desert meeting the ocean. The waves of the Bay of Bengal crash against this shore with surprising force, particularly during the monsoon season when swells can reach heights of 3 to 4 meters. What's mesmerizing about Cox's Bazar is the way the light plays across the water and sand throughout the day. At sunrise, the entire beach glows in shades of pink and orange as the sun emerges from the Bay of Bengal, while sunset transforms the western sky into layers of purple and crimson. The temperature of the sand varies dramatically. Comfortable and cool early morning, but by midday it can reach temperatures exceeding 122 to 1550 key, hot enough that walking barefoot becomes impossible. The water temperature remains fairly constant year-round, hovering between 77–84 degrees, 25–29 degrees C, making swimming pleasant except during monsoon season when the currents become dangerous. Near Cox's Bazar lies St. Martin's Island, Bangladesh's only coral island, located about 9 kilometers from the mainland. This small island, just 8 square kilometers in area, represents a completely different ecosystem from anything else in Bangladesh. Here, coral formations beneath crystal-clear water create habitats for tropical fish, sea turtles, and during certain seasons, dolphins that swim remarkably close to shore. The island's beaches are covered not in sand, but in crushed coral and shells, creating a shoreline that crunches distinctively underfoot and gleams almost white in the midday sun. Coconut palms lean at dramatic angles over the water, their fronds rustling in the constant sea breeze that keeps temperatures slightly cooler than the mainland, averaging around 82 degrees, 28 degrees, even during the hottest months. These natural landscapes, from the tiger-haunted waterways of the Sundarbans to the endless stretch of Cox's Bazar beach, form the environmental backdrop of Bangladesh. But they're just the setting for something even more compelling: the human stories, the ancient urban landscapes, and particularly the mysteries and daily life of Old Dhaka that we're about to explore in depth. How do millions of people thrive in one of Earth's most challenging environments? What happens in the narrow alleys of a 400-year-old neighborhood that still pulses with the energy of a Mughal trading capital? The answers reveal a resilience and cultural richness that will change how you think about urban life and human adaptation. Beyond the natural wonders lies another Bangladesh, one of waterways that function as highways, floating markets that appear at dawn, and villages built entirely on platforms that rise and fall with seasonal floods. The river system of Bangladesh isn't just a geographical feature. It's the circulatory system of the entire nation, and understanding it is essential to grasping how life actually works here. The 3 major rivers, the Ganges, known locally as the Padma, the Brahmaputra, called the Jamuna, and the Meghna, carry an estimated 1.2 trillion cubic meters of water annually, along with 1 billion tons of sediment that continuously reshapes the landscape. During monsoon season, these rivers can swell to widths exceeding 10 kilometers, transforming from rivers into inland seas. Travel to the northern region of Sylhet, and you'll discover something that seems impossible until you see it with your own eyes. The Ratargal Swamp Forest, one of the few freshwater swamp forests in the world. Unlike the saltwater Sundarbans, Ratargal is submerged beneath 20–30 feet of fresh water for up to 6 months each year during the monsoon. The experience of paddling through this forest during flood season is surreal. Trees emerge from clear water that acts like a mirror, reflecting the canopy above and creating an optical illusion that makes it difficult to distinguish where the real forest ends and the reflection begins. The water here is so clear you can see fish swimming 3 to 4 meters below your boat, weaving between submerged tree roots and vegetation. The forest covers only about 200 hectares, but it's packed with biodiversity adapted to this unique environment. Korach trees, which can survive being completely submerged for months, dominate the landscape, their trunks reaching diameters of over 1 meter and heights of 20 meters. During the dry season from November to May, the water recedes, revealing a completely different forest floor covered in fallen leaves, exposed roots, and small pools where fish wait for the water to return. Local fishermen know exactly when and where to cast their nets, following patterns passed down through generations. The sound here during monsoon is distinctive. The constant drip of water from leaves, the splash of fish breaking the surface, and the calls of water birds, including the Asian open-bill stork, and various species of kingfishers whose bright blue and orange plumage creates flashes of color against the green foliage. But perhaps the most visually stunning natural phenomenon in Bangladesh occurs in the Howrah region of the northeast. Howrahs are large bowl-shaped depressions that form wetlands during monsoon season. The Tangwar Howrah, covering about 100 square kilometers, transforms completely between seasons. During monsoon, it becomes a vast inland sea dotted with small islands where villages sit on raised platforms. During the dry season, it becomes a patchwork of green fields where farmers grow rice on the fertile deposited silt. The transition between these two states creates one of nature's great spectacles. As water recedes, millions of migratory birds arrive from Siberia, China, and Central Asia. During peak migration, you can see flocks numbering in the tens of thousands, creating clouds of birds that darken portions of the sky. The air fills with the sound of hundreds of species calling simultaneously, creating a natural symphony that changes in pitch and intensity throughout the day. These landscapes demonstrate something crucial about Bangladesh. This is a land in constant transformation, where nothing stays fixed, where water dictates the rhythm of life, and where people have learned to adapt to changes that would overwhelm less resilient cultures. But all of these natural wonders, as spectacular as they are, serve as prelude to something even more compelling: the human landscapes, the urban intensity, and particularly the ancient heart of Dhaka that holds stories spanning 4 centuries. What exactly awaits in those narrow alleys? How does a 400-year-old neighborhood function in the modern world? And what secrets have been preserved in Old Dhaka that reveal something profound about cultural continuity? The answers begin with understanding that Old Dhaka isn't a museum or a tourist attraction that's been preserved for visitors. It's a living, breathing, working neighborhood where approximately 400,000 people conduct their daily lives in conditions that challenge every modern notion of urban planning. This is where our focus shifts from the natural to the profoundly human, from what nature created to what people have built, maintained, and transformed across centuries. The story of Old Dhaka is, in many ways, the story of Bangladesh itself. Resilience, adaptation, the blending of influences, and the fierce preservation of identity in the face of overwhelming pressure to modernize and forget. Step into Old Dhaka, locally known as Puran Dhaka, and you enter what feels like a portal to the Mughal era, though one that's been lived in continuously for over 400 years. This isn't a reconstructed historic district. It's a functioning urban ecosystem where buildings from the 17th century stand next to structures from the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries, creating an architectural timeline you can read simply by walking down a single street. The neighborhood is centered around the area between Buriganga River to the south and extends north for about 3 kilometers, encompassing neighborhoods like Shankari Bazaar, Tanti Bazaar, Islampur, Chowk Bazaar, and the area around Lalbagh Fort. Each of these neighborhoods has maintained distinct identities based on the trades and communities that settled there during Mughal times. The heart of Old Dhaka was established in 1608, when Islam Khan, the Mughal governor, moved the capital of Bengal from Rajmahal to Dhaka, renaming it Jahangir Nagar after Emperor Jahangir. Within decades, the city had grown into one of the largest commercial centers in South Asia, with a population estimated at 200,000 by the mid-17th century, enormous for that era, comparable to many European capitals. The city's strategic location on the Buriganga River made it perfect for trade. Boats could navigate from Dhaka to the Bay of Bengal, and from there to the entire Indian Ocean trading network. Goods flowed into Dhaka from across Bengal and beyond. Silk from China, spices from the Moluccas, cotton from Gujarat, and precious stones from Burma. But Dhaka's real wealth came from what was produced here, particularly that legendary muslin cloth that was so fine it was called woven air. What made Dhaka's muslin so special? The fabric was woven from a specific variety of cotton called futi karpas that grew only in the unique conditions of the Bengal Delta, combined with water from the Meghna River that had particular qualities essential for processing the thread. Master weavers could produce muslin so fine that a piece measuring 25 meters in length and 1 meter in width could weigh as little as 100 grams and could be pulled through a standard wedding ring. The highest grade, called malmal khaz or malmal shahi, king's muslin, required such skill and time that a single piece might take 6 months to weave and could sell for the equivalent of 3,000 to $5,000 in today's money. European accounts describe being able to see a person's entire body through 7 layers of this fabric, and it was said that morning dew was enough to make it transparent. Mughal emperors and European royalty competed for the finest pieces, and the trade made Dhaka's merchant families extraordinarily wealthy. These wealthy merchants built magnificent mansions throughout Old Dhaka, and while many are now crumbling, they remain inhabited and functional. The typical mansion followed a distinct architectural pattern, built around one or more internal courtyards, with rooms facing inward for privacy and coolness. Thick walls designed to keep out heat, high ceilings reaching 4 to 5 meters to allow hot air to rise, and often featuring balconies enclosed with intricate wooden or iron grillwork. The best preserved example is Ahsan Manzil, the Pink Palace, built in 1872 by Nawab Abdul Ghani, which sits on the banks of the Buriganga River. This Indo-Saracenic style building, with its distinctive pink color and large dome, contained 31 rooms spread over 4,900 square meters and hosted everyone from viceroys to princes. Today, it functions as a museum, but it gives you a sense of the opulence that once characterized Old Dhaka's elite residences. But here's what makes Old Dhaka truly unique in the modern world: the neighborhood system based on trades that has survived largely intact since the Mughal period. Walk down Shankari Bazaar, and you'll find yourself in the neighborhood of Hindu goldsmiths and conch shell craftsmen who have practiced their trades here for over 400 years. The street name itself means conch shell workers' market, and despite the passage of centuries and the massive disruptions of partition in 1947 and the Liberation War in 1971, families continue the same work their ancestors did during Emperor Jahangir's reign. The air rings with the tap-tap-tap of tiny hammers shaping gold into intricate jewelry designs, and the distinctive smell of the shell-working process, slightly fishy and sharp, fills certain corners. Travel a few hundred meters to Tanta Bazaar, and suddenly you're surrounded by cloth merchants whose warehouses are stacked floor to ceiling with fabrics of every imaginable color and texture. The name Tanta Bazaar means weaver's market, and while the legendary muslin weavers are gone, the technique was deliberately destroyed during the British colonial period to protect England's textile industry, their descendants continue working with fabric. The narrow streets here barely accommodate the cargo rickshaws loaded with massive bundles of cloth, creating traffic jams that require complicated negotiations to untangle. Shop after shop extends deep into buildings that seem far larger inside than their narrow facades suggest, with fabrics hanging from walls and ceilings, creating tunnels of color and texture. Move to Islampur, and you're in the heart of the wholesale clothing district, where ready-made garments are sold in quantities that boggle the mind. This area supplies much of Bangladesh's domestic clothing market, and during peak seasons, especially before the 2 Eid festivals, the crowds become so dense that moving through the streets takes genuine physical effort. Vendors display their goods from tiny shops barely 2 meters wide but extending 10-15 meters deep, stacked with clothing from floor to ceiling. The energy here is intense. Shouted negotiations, the rustle of thousands of plastic-wrapped garments, the constant flow of loaded rickshaws, and the press of humanity all create a sensory experience that's simultaneously overwhelming and exhilarating. Then there's Chowk Bazaar, one of the oldest commercial areas, which comes alive during Ramadan in a way that has to be experienced to be believed. This neighborhood becomes the food preparation center for the entire city's iftar meals, the meal that breaks the daily fast at sunset. Starting from mid-afternoon, hundreds of vendors set up temporary operations, creating an outdoor food market that stretches for over a kilometer. The smells are incredible: frying samosas and pakoras, roasting kebabs, sweet and savory dishes being prepared in massive quantities. As sunset approaches, the crowd swells to tens of thousands of people, all trying to purchase their iftar items. At the exact moment of sunset, when the call to prayer rings out, everything stops momentarily as people break their fast, creating one of the most distinctive daily rituals in Old Dhaka. The tradition of Chowk Bazaar's iftar market dates back at least 200 years, and certain vendors claim their families have occupied the same spots for over a century. What's remarkable about all these specialized neighborhoods is that they've survived the forces that destroyed similar traditional commercial districts in cities worldwide. Why has Old Dhaka retained this organization when modernization typically homogenizes urban commercial spaces? The answer lies partly in economics. The clustering of similar businesses creates efficiency and allows for specialization, but more deeply in a cultural commitment to tradition and family legacy that remains incredibly strong in Bangladesh. In Old Dhaka, your family's trade isn't just your job, it's your identity, your connection to history, and your contribution to the neighborhood's continuity. This isn't romantic preservation for tourists. It's a living economic and cultural system that continues to function because it works. But to truly understand Old Dhaka, you need to experience what daily life actually looks like in these narrow lanes, where history isn't studied but lived. Let's follow a typical morning in Shankari Bazaar, though typical hardly describes anything that happens here. By 6 a.m., long before most of Dhaka awakens, the goldsmiths are already at their benches. These aren't large workshops with modern equipment. Most are tiny spaces, 2 by 3 meters, often at the front of homes where families have lived for generations. The goldsmith sits cross-legged on a low platform, his tools laid out with precise organization: hammers of different weights, files of varying coarseness, containers of acid for testing purity, and a small furnace fueled by charcoal that reaches temperatures of 1,148 degrees, 164 degrees, the exact melting point of gold. Watch closely, and you'll see techniques that haven't changed in centuries. To create the intricate filigree work that Bengali jewelry is famous for, the goldsmith first draws gold through progressively smaller holes in a metal plate, creating wire so fine it's barely visible. This wire is then twisted, coiled, and soldered into patterns so delicate that a piece might contain hundreds of individual elements, each placed by hand without magnification. A single necklace can take 3 to 4 weeks to complete, and the goldsmith works 6 days a week, typically 10-12 hours per day. Despite this intensive labor, many goldsmiths in Shankari Bazaar make modest incomes, approximately $250–350 per month, because they're competing with mass-produced jewelry and because the value of their skill is underappreciated in an economy increasingly focused on speed over craftsmanship. The relationship between goldsmith and customer in Old Dhaka operates on trust systems that would be impossible in most modern contexts. A customer brings gold to be fashioned into jewelry, and the goldsmith works with it in his home workshop for weeks. No written contracts, no security deposits, no insurance, just the understanding that families have been doing business this way for generations. If a goldsmith cheats or fails to deliver quality work, the entire neighborhood would know within hours, and his reputation, built over generations, would be destroyed. This social capital is more valuable than any contract, and it's this web of mutual obligation and reputation that makes Old Dhaka's economy function despite appearing chaotic to outsiders. Move from Shankari Bazaar to the area around Lal Bah Fort, and you'll discover the rickshaw painters, practitioners of what might be Bangladesh's most distinctive folk art form. Bangladesh has an estimated 600,000 cycle rickshaws nationwide, and a significant portion of the painting work originates in workshops around Old Dhaka. These aren't simple paint jobs. They're rolling galleries showcasing a unique artistic tradition that blends Mughal miniature painting techniques, Hindu religious imagery, Bollywood film posters, and contemporary political symbolism into a distinctly Bangladeshi art form. The process of creating a rickshaw painting is more complex than you'd imagine. The metal body of the rickshaw is first sanded and primed, then a base coat is applied. The artist sketches the design freehand. No projectors, no stencils, just years of practice that allow them to recreate complex scenes from memory. Popular motifs include the Taj Mahal, representing romance and beauty, tigers, representing strength, film stars, representing glamour and aspiration, historical monuments of Dhaka, and occasionally political figures. The painting is done using synthetic enamel paints applied with small brushes, building up layers of color to create the bold, vibrant appearance. A skilled artist can complete a full rickshaw painting in about 2 days, working from early morning until evening with only a brief lunch break. The payment for this work is approximately $25 to $35 per rickshaw, meaning an artist might earn $300 to $400 per month if he maintains a steady workflow. What's particularly moving about the rickshaw painting tradition is that it's under threat. Fewer young people are learning the trade, partly because the income is modest, and partly because rickshaw itself faces an uncertain future as cities modernize. Yet these paintings represent something irreplaceable, a visual record of Bangladeshi popular culture, dreams and aspirations created by working-class artists whose names are rarely recorded, but whose work is seen by millions daily. Some of these rickshaw paintings have been exhibited in museums in London, New York, and Paris, but most will eventually be painted over when the rickshaw needs refurbishment, disappearing as quickly as they appeared. The daily rhythm of Old Dhaka operates on a schedule that reflects both Islamic tradition and commercial necessity. The first call to prayer, Fajr, rings out around 5:00 a.m., though in the dense streets with multiple mosques, you'll hear it echoing from various directions with slight delays that create an auditory wave moving through the neighborhood. By 6:00 a.m., the streets are already active with street food vendors setting up their stalls, selling paratha, flaky flatbread, with vegetable curry, singara, triangular savory pastries filled with spiced vegetables, and cha, tea boiled with milk and spices, for approximately $0.30 to $0.50, a breakfast that fuels the working population. As morning progresses, the commercial areas become increasingly congested. Rickshaws, often 3 or 4 abreast in streets barely wide enough for 2, create tangles that require impressive negotiation skills to resolve. Pedestrians flow around stopped vehicles, vendors carrying goods on their heads weave through impossible gaps, and somehow it all functions with minimal road rage or conflict. The noise level is intense. Rickshaw bells constantly dinging, vendors calling out their wares, the rumble of cargo vehicles, conversations shouted over the din, and periodic blasts from loudspeakers advertising everything from political rallies to new shop openings. By midday, when temperatures climb above 90 degrees and 32 degrees, and humidity approaches 80%, activity slows slightly. Many shops close briefly for dur, prayer, and lunch, creating a temporary lull. But then comes the most revealing time to understand Old Dhaka's social fabric. Late afternoon into evening, as the heat lessens, entire families emerge into the narrow lanes. Men sit on stoops discussing politics and business, their conversations animated and loud but good-natured. Children play cricket in spaces barely 10 meters long, using wickets improvised from bricks and bats made from scrap wood. Women gather in small groups, often on rooftops where there's more privacy and a slight breeze. The evening call to prayer, Maghrib, brings another pause. Then activity resumes with renewed energy. Street food vendors do their best business in these hours. Fuchka, crispy hollow shells filled with spiced water and chickpeas. Jalmuri, puffed rice mixed with vegetables, spices, and mustard oil. And during winter, pitha, traditional rice cakes in dozens of varieties. These aren't just snacks. They're social rituals, with people gathering around favorite vendors, eating while standing, engaging in rapid-fire conversations in Bengali that can shift from serious to joking in seconds. The sense of community in Old Dhaka is so strong, it's almost tangible. In neighborhoods where families have lived for generations, everyone knows everyone's business, which might sound intrusive to modern sensibilities, but creates a safety net that's becoming rare in the world. If someone falls ill, neighbors bring food. If a family faces financial difficulties, loans are arranged informally through community networks. When there's a wedding, and Bengali weddings are massive multi-day affairs, the entire neighborhood participates in the celebration. This social cohesion isn't idealized or perfect. There are conflicts, tensions between Hindu and Muslim families occasionally surface, and the younger generation sometimes chafes against the community's expectations. But the basic structure of mutual support and shared identity remains remarkably intact, despite the pressures of modernization, poverty, and overcrowding that would destroy community bonds in most urban settings. Now we arrive at perhaps the most fascinating and least understood aspect of Old Dhaka: the architectural phenomenon of buildings that shouldn't exist by any modern standard, yet continue to function, and the cultural practice of adaptive reuse that has created some of the most remarkable living spaces you'll find anywhere in the world. Walk through certain areas of Old Dhaka, particularly around Shikari Bazaar and Tanta Bazaar, and you'll see buildings that are literally leaning, tilted at angles of 5 to 10 degrees, sometimes more. These aren't abandoned structures. They're fully inhabited, with families living on multiple floors, shops operating on ground levels, and in some cases, these leaning buildings have been occupied continuously for over 150 years. The reason for this architectural precariousness lies in Old Dhaka's foundation, or rather, the lack of proper foundations. Most historic buildings were constructed directly on the delta's soft soil, without the deep pilings that modern construction requires. Over time, particularly during monsoon seasons, when water tables rise and soil saturates, buildings slowly sink and shift. The Buriganga River, which once flowed directly along the southern edge of Old Dhaka, has changed course slightly over the centuries, and land that was once stable riverbank has become softer. Additionally, the practice of digging wells inside buildings, common in 19th and early 20th century Dhaka, has created subsurface voids that cause differential settling. What's extraordinary isn't that these buildings are leaning, it's that people have adapted to live in them. Inside a tilted building, floors aren't level. Furniture is often propped up with wooden wedges to compensate for the angle. Doors don't hang straight in their frames, requiring careful adjustment to open and close properly. Yet families have lived this way for generations, some considering the tilt simply part of the building's character. In a few cases, particularly dramatic lean has been addressed by external support structures, wooden or steel braces that prop buildings from outside, creating narrow passageways beneath. These supports have sometimes been in place for 50 years or more, becoming permanent features rather than temporary fixes. The practice of adaptive reuse in Old Dhaka goes far beyond dealing with leaning buildings. It encompasses a whole philosophy of making do, transforming and repurposing that reflects both economic necessity and cultural creativity. Buildings that were once single-family mansions have been subdivided dozens of times, with internal courtyards roofed over to create additional floors, balconies enclosed to expand living space, and elaborate systems of shared facilities developed. A building originally designed for perhaps 20 people might now house 100 or more, organized into small family units that share cooking facilities, bathrooms, and water supplies through complex schedules and negotiations that outsiders would find impossible to navigate. The most striking example of this adaptive culture exists in the old merchant houses. These buildings, constructed in the 18th and 19th centuries, originally featured elaborate architectural details, carved wooden pillars, decorative plasterwork, colored glass windows, and tiled floors imported from Europe. Over decades of use and subdivision, much of this original grandeur has been hidden beneath layers of practical modifications. Yet fragments remain visible, a carved capital emerging from behind a more recent wall, a section of original tile floor in a corner, a decorative arch incorporated into a newer structure. These buildings have become palimpsests, architectural documents where you can read multiple eras of history layered one atop another. But here's the revelation that changes how you understand Old Dhaka's cultural significance. This isn't decay or neglect in the traditional sense. It's a fundamentally different approach to buildings and urban space, one that values continuity of use over preservation of original form, that prioritizes human habitation over architectural purity, and that accepts change as inevitable rather than something to be prevented. In Western preservation philosophy, the goal is often to freeze a building at a particular historical moment, removing later additions to reveal original features. Old Dhaka practices the opposite, continuous transformation, where each era leaves its mark and the building's value lies precisely in this accumulated history of adaptation and use. This philosophy extends to entire neighborhoods. The street pattern of Old Dhaka follows lines established in Mughal times, but buildings have been demolished and rebuilt countless times while maintaining the overall urban structure. Ground floors that once housed different trades now accommodate new businesses, but the spatial relationships, narrow streets, buildings directly abutting each other, internal courtyards, remain essentially unchanged. This creates an unusual situation where you're walking through a 400-year-old urban pattern while surrounded by structures of various ages, creating continuity at the urban scale even as individual buildings change. The cultural significance of this approach becomes clear when you consider what's been lost in other South Asian cities. Lahore's Old City, Delhi's Shahjahanabad, Kolkata's older neighborhoods all have faced similar pressures, but many have been demolished for modernization, their traditional structures replaced with concrete apartment blocks that break the historical urban fabric. Old Dhaka's survival, though often messy and chaotic, represents the preservation of not just buildings, but an entire way of urban life, a functioning example of how pre-modern cities actually worked and evolved. Now, here's something to consider. What do you think about this approach to historic preservation? Could you imagine living in a building that leans where original features are hidden but present, where privacy is limited but community is strong? What surprises you more, that these buildings have survived so long, or that people continue choosing to live in them despite having other options? Pause the video and leave a comment with your thoughts. It's the best way to support the channel, and we genuinely love reading different perspectives on these cultural practices. Take a moment to read other comments too. You'll find fascinating viewpoints from people around the world. Thanks for your engagement, and now let's discover more of what makes this place extraordinary. Beyond the physical structures, Old Dhaka's market systems represent another layer of cultural continuity that's increasingly rare globally. The wholesale markets operate on relationships and trust networks that have functioned for centuries with minimal written documentation. A trader in Islampur might have a network of suppliers, transporters, and buyers that spans the entire country, yet these relationships are maintained primarily through face-to-face interaction, mobile phone calls, and verbal agreements. Contracts exist, but they're often formalities. The real business operates on reputation and mutual obligation built over years or decades of dealing. Beyond the architecture and commerce of Old Dhaka lies the cultural expression that defines Bangladeshi identity. Food that goes far beyond simple sustenance to become an art form, a social ritual, and a connection to centuries of history. Bengali cuisine is considered one of South Asia's great culinary traditions, characterized by subtle spicing, an emphasis on fresh ingredients, and cooking techniques that have been refined across generations. What makes Bangladeshi food particularly distinctive is the influence of the delta environment. Fish features prominently in ways found nowhere else, and rice isn't just a staple, but the foundation of culinary identity. The most important dish in Bengali cuisine, both symbolically and practically, is rice and fish, mach bhat in Bengali. This isn't a single recipe, but a culinary philosophy encompassing hundreds of variations. Bangladeshi cooks prepare fish in ways that highlight its freshness and natural flavor rather than overwhelming it with heavy spicing. Hilsa fish, Eilish, caught in the rivers of Bangladesh, holds almost sacred status, particularly when caught during monsoon season when the fish migrate upstream to spawn. A whole hilsa, typically weighing 1 to 2 kilograms, might cost $15 to $20 in local markets. Expensive by Bangladeshi standards, but considered worth it for special occasions. The fish is prepared in dozens of ways. Steamed with mustard paste, cooked in a light curry with minimal spices, fried and served with rice, or incorporated into elaborate dishes for celebrations. The preparation of hilsa demonstrates Bengali culinary philosophy. The fish is never masked. Cooking methods preserve and enhance its distinctive, slightly oily richness. Mustard seeds are ground into a paste that's sharp and pungent, cutting through the fish's richness. Green chilies add heat without overwhelming, and the use of mustard oil, which has a distinctive flavor that's simultaneously nutty and sharp, ties everything together. Eating hilsa requires skill because the fish is notoriously bony, with hundreds of fine bones that must be navigated carefully. Skilled Bengali eaters can separate flesh from bones in their mouths, a technique learned in childhood that becomes second nature. But Bengali cuisine extends far beyond fish. Buna khichuri, a dish of rice and lentils, slow-cooked together with whole spices until creamy, is considered comfort food. It's traditionally eaten during monsoon evenings, served with fried eggplant, fried eggs, and various vegetable preparations. The dish takes at least an hour to cook properly, with the rice and lentils breaking down to create a texture that's neither fully solid nor liquid, but somewhere between. The smell while it's cooking, basmati rice, mung dal lentils, ghee, clarified butter, and whole spices like cinnamon, cardamom, and bay leaves, fills entire buildings and is instantly recognizable to anyone who grew up eating it. Then there's the street food culture, which in Bangladesh reaches levels of sophistication and variety that rival any country globally. Fuchka, also called pani puri in other regions, involves crispy, hollow semolina shells filled with a mixture of boiled chickpeas, potatoes, and tamarind water that's simultaneously sweet, sour, spicy, and savory. Each vendor has their own recipe for the tamarind water, guarded as closely as any family secret. Watching a skilled fuchka vendor work is mesmerizing. They can assemble and hand you 10-12 fuchka in rapid succession, each filled with precise amounts of ingredients, the whole transaction taking perhaps 2 minutes and costing around $0.50 for a serving. Kachi biryani represents the pinnacle of Bangladeshi celebratory cooking. Unlike biryanis in other regions where meat is pre-cooked before being layered with rice, in Kachi biryani, raw marinated meat, typically mutton or goat, is layered with partially cooked basmati rice, and everything cooks together in a sealed pot. This technique, requiring precise heat control and timing, results in meat so tender it falls from the bone and rice infused with meat juices and spices. The best kachi biryani in Dhaka is said to come from restaurants in Old Dhaka that have been making it the same way for over 100 years. A full plate with meat, rice, potato, and egg costs approximately 4 to 5 hours, and during festivals and weddings, people will order 50-100 plates at once for guests. Sweets, mishti, occupy a special category in Bengali culture. Unlike Western desserts, mishti are based primarily on milk products, particularly chana, a type of fresh cheese made by curdling milk, and kheer, milk reduced for hours until thick and creamy. Rasgulla, soft white balls of chana soaked in sugar syrup, are light and spongy with a delicate sweetness. Sandesh, made from chana and sugar, comes in countless variations, from simple forms molded into shapes to elaborate versions flavored with saffron, rose water, or fruit. The best sweet shops in Dhaka have been operated by the same families for generations, with techniques for achieving the perfect texture and sweetness level passed down as closely guarded trade secrets. A kilogram of good quality mishti costs approximately $6 to $8. Beyond food, festivals reveal the deep cultural rhythms of Bangladesh. Pohela Boishakh, the Bengali New Year celebrated on April 14th, might be the most distinctly Bengali celebration, observed by people of all religions. In Dhaka, the day begins with thousands gathering at Ramna Park at dawn for a cultural program featuring traditional music. People wear traditional clothing, women in white saris with red borders, men in Punjabi, traditional long shirts, and pajamas. The celebration continues throughout the day, with processions featuring enormous papier-mâché masks representing animals, mythological figures, and folk characters, created by students from Dhaka University's Fine Arts Institute. These processions, called Mangal Shobhajatra, were added to UNESCO's representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity in 2016. The entire day becomes a celebration of Bengali culture in its purest form, deliberately separate from religious identity. Food plays a central role. Panta bhat, fermented rice soaked overnight in water, served with fried hilsa fish, green chilies, and onions, is the traditional breakfast. Vendors sell traditional items: clay pots, handmade toys, folk art, traditional instruments like the ektara, one-stringed instrument, and dotara, four-stringed instrument. The atmosphere throughout Dhaka, particularly in areas around Dhaka University, becomes festive in a uniquely Bengali way, not rowdy or excessive, but joyful, colorful, and deeply rooted in cultural pride. Durga Puja, the most important festival for Bangladesh's Hindu minority, approximately 8% of the population, transforms neighborhoods with significant Hindu populations, particularly areas of Old Dhaka like Shakari Bazaar. For 10 days, elaborate temporary structures called pandals are constructed to house clay statues of the goddess Durga and her family, created by artists who spend months preparing these sculptures. The pandals become centers of community gathering, with people visiting multiple pandals throughout the city to admire the artistry and architectural creativity. Each pandal tries to outdo others with innovative themes and designs. Some recreate famous buildings, others explore abstract concepts, all executed with impressive skill and creativity. The festival culminates with immersion of the statues in rivers, a bittersweet moment marking the goddess's return to her celestial home. Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha, the two major Islamic festivals, bring Bangladesh to a virtual standstill as millions travel from cities to ancestral villages in what might be the world's largest annual migration relative to population. In the days before Eid, Old Dhaka's commercial areas experience shopping intensity that defies description. Entire streets become impassable due to crowds, with people purchasing new clothes, gifts, and food items. On Eid morning, after prayers at mosques or outdoor prayer grounds that can accommodate tens of thousands, the day revolves around family visits, elaborate meals, and giving money to children. The sense of community joy during Eid is palpable, with even strangers greeting each other and sharing sweets. Move beyond the festivals and commercial life, and you'll discover Bangladesh's artistic traditions that date back centuries while continuing to evolve. Nakshikantha, the art of creating quilts from old saris and cloth through elaborate running stitches, represents perhaps the most distinctly Bengali folk art form. Traditionally, women would collect worn-out saris and dhotis, traditional men's garments, layer them and stitch them together using thread pulled from the colored borders of old saris. The stitching itself creates patterns, geometric designs, representations of daily life, religious motifs, flora and fauna, transforming functional quilts into artworks that can take months or even years to complete. The best Nakshikantha feature stitching so dense that the fabric becomes stiff, with every centimeter covered in colored thread creating images of village life, boats on rivers, fish, birds, and plants. Museums worldwide now collect antique Nakshikantha as examples of folk art, with particularly fine examples from the 19th century selling for thousands of dollars at international auctions. Yet the tradition continues in villages across Bangladesh, where women gather in groups during afternoon hours, their hands moving in practiced rhythm while they talk, creating kantha that serve as wedding gifts, bed covers, and family heirlooms passed down through generations. Boat building represents another craft tradition that has adapted to survive despite modernization. Bangladesh still relies heavily on boats for transportation, particularly in rural areas where rivers remain the primary highways. The traditional wooden boats, nuka in Bengali, come in dozens of specialized forms. Small fishing boats, passenger vessels that can carry 50, 60 people, cargo boats capable of transporting several tons. Boat builders work mostly by eye and experience rather than detailed plans, using techniques passed down through generations. The wood of choice is often sun-dried rain tree or shigun, teak, shaped using traditional hand tools, including the distinctive Bengali adze. A medium-sized passenger boat might take 3 to 4 months to build and cost approximately $3,000 to $4,000. The pottery tradition, particularly in areas around Dhaka, continues to produce both utilitarian items and decorative pieces using techniques dating back centuries. Potter families work with clay from specific riverbanks, known for particular qualities that make superior pottery. The potter's wheel, often a simple stone disc that spins on a vertical axis, is powered by foot, allowing the potter's hands to remain free for shaping. Watching a skilled potter transform a lump of clay into a perfectly symmetrical pot in less than 2 minutes demonstrates mastery achieved through decades of daily practice. These pots, once fired in traditional kilns fueled by rice husks, are used throughout Bangladesh for cooking, water storage, and during festivals. During Durga Puja, potters' neighborhoods work around the clock for weeks, creating the hundreds of clay statues needed for celebrations, with entire families, including children, participating in the work. Architecture in Bangladesh has undergone dramatic transformation while incorporating elements that respond to the country's unique climate challenges. Louis Khan's National Parliament building in Dhaka, completed in 1982, is considered one of the 20th century's architectural masterpieces. The massive concrete structure, featuring geometric cutouts that allow light and air to penetrate while providing shade, combines monumentality with functionality suited to Bangladesh's heat and humidity. The building encompasses 208,000 square meters and took 23 years to complete. Khan designed it to be naturally ventilated despite its size, with the geometric openings creating airflow patterns that reduce the need for air conditioning, even with outdoor temperatures exceeding 95 degrees Celsius, 35 degrees Celsius. More recently, architects like Kashef Chowdhury have gained international recognition for designs that respond specifically to Bangladeshi conditions, particularly the constant presence of water. His Friendship Center in Gaibandha, completed in 2011, is built to survive flooding that inundates the area annually. The building sits on a raised platform, with rainwater collected and channeled through the structure's design, creating cooling effects and water storage. The use of local materials, bricks fired in nearby kilns, locally sourced wood, and reliance on natural ventilation rather than mechanical cooling demonstrates how contemporary architecture can address climate challenges while respecting local building traditions. Wildlife in Bangladesh, beyond the famous Bengal tigers of the Sundarbans, includes species that surprise most visitors. The delta's rivers and wetlands provide habitat for the Ganges river dolphin, one of the world's few freshwater dolphin species, though populations have declined significantly due to pollution and boat traffic. An estimated 300 to 400 individuals survive in Bangladeshi rivers, primarily in the Halda River and tributaries of the Meghna. These dolphins are nearly blind, navigating murky river water using echolocation. Conservation efforts have intensified in recent years, with fishing restrictions in key dolphin habitats and rescue operations for dolphins trapped in irrigation canals. The Asian elephant population in Bangladesh, numbering only about 250-300 individuals, survives primarily in the forests of the Chittagong Hill Tracts and Sylhet. These elephants face increasing human-elephant conflict as their forest habitat shrinks, and they venture into agricultural areas, resulting in crop damage and occasional human casualties. Conservation organizations work with local communities to develop early warning systems using SMS alerts when elephant herds approach villages, allowing farmers to protect crops and avoid confrontations. Bird diversity in Bangladesh is remarkable, with over 700 species recorded, including resident species and migrants that arrive during winter from as far as Siberia and Central Asia. The Haor regions become temporary homes to hundreds of thousands of ducks, geese, and waders from November through March. Among the most striking is the greater adjutant stork, a massive bird standing 1.5 meters tall with a wingspan exceeding 2.5 meters. Once common across South Asia, the species is now endangered with significant populations remaining only in parts of Bangladesh and India. These unusual-looking birds, with their bare wrinkled heads and large hanging throat pouches, nest in colonies in large trees, and their presence in an area is considered environmentally significant because they function as nature's sanitation workers, consuming carrion that would otherwise spread disease. If you're inspired to experience Bangladesh firsthand, here's everything you need to know to plan your visit practically and respectfully. Getting to Bangladesh typically means flying into Hazrat Shah Jalal International Airport in Dhaka, the country's primary international gateway, located about 20 kilometers north of the city center. Direct flights are available from major hubs throughout Asia, the Middle East, and increasingly from Europe. From London, you're looking at approximately 11-12 hours with one connection, typically through Dubai, Doha, or Istanbul. From New York, expect 18-20 hours total travel time with at least one connection, often through Middle Eastern hubs. From Singapore or Bangkok, direct flights take about 3 hours. From major Indian cities like Delhi or Kolkata, flight times are 1 to 2 hours. Alternative entry points include Shah Amanat International Airport in Chittagong for those heading directly to southeastern Bangladesh, and Osmani International Airport in Sylhet for the northeastern region. Visa requirements vary significantly by nationality. Citizens of certain countries, including Japan, South Korea, and several Southeast Asian nations, can obtain visas on arrival valid for 30 days, costing approximately $50. Most other nationalities, including those from the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, European Union countries, and Australia, need to obtain visas before arrival either through Bangladesh embassies or consulates in their home countries, or increasingly through the e-visa system available online. Tourist visas are typically valid for 30-60 days and cost between $50–$80, depending on duration and nationality. Processing times for embassy visas are usually 3 to 5 business days, while e-visas can be processed in 3 to 5 days. Your passport should be valid for at least 6 months beyond your intended departure date from Bangladesh. No special vaccinations are mandatory for entry, though hepatitis A, typhoid, and routine vaccinations are recommended by most health authorities. The currency is the Bangladeshi taka, BDT, with exchange rates typically around 110–115 BDT to 1 USD. Most major hotels, upscale restaurants, and some shops in Dhaka accept US dollars, but you'll need local currency for the majority of transactions. ATMs are widely available in Dhaka and other major cities, with most accepting international cards, Visa and MasterCard primarily, though daily withdrawal limits typically range from 20,000 to 40,000 BDT, $175 to $350. Credit cards are accepted at major hotels and higher-end restaurants, but rarely in smaller establishments or markets. Foreign currency exchange is available at banks and authorized exchange houses, with USD, euros, and British pounds easily exchanged. Exchange rates at banks versus exchange houses vary minimally, typically within 1–2%. Now for costs. Bangladesh is remarkably affordable for travelers, especially compared to many Asian destinations. A cup of excellent chai at a local tea stall costs approximately 10–15 BDT, 0.09–0.13, while the same in a cafe might be 100–150 BDT, 0.90–1.30. A substantial meal at a local restaurant, perhaps rice, curry, dal, and vegetables, runs 150–250 BDT, 130–220 per person, while a similar meal at a mid-range restaurant in Dhaka costs 500–800 BDT, 447 per person. At higher-end restaurants catering to expatriates and wealthy locals, expect 1,500–2,500 BDT, 1322 per person, for a full meal with drinks. Street food is incredibly affordable. A serving of fuchka costs 30–50 BDT, 0.26–0.44, while jalmuri is often just 20–30 BDT, 0.17–0.26. And this is where this video ends for today. If you're fascinated by these incredible stories of cultures and places that few people know about, I have a special request for you. Subscribe to the channel now and turn on the notification bell. This ensures you won't miss any of our upcoming documentaries about the most remote and fascinating corners of our planet. And here's the question that really matters. Do you want to see the continuation of this documentary? Leave in the comments, "I want part 2," if you want me to bring the rest of this story. The more comments and likes it receives, the faster I'll produce and publish the continuation. Your participation literally decides whether this documentary continues or not. Also, take the opportunity to tell me, what country are you watching from? It's incredible for me to know that people from all over the world gather here to discover these extraordinary ways of life. Each interaction from you helps me continue producing this quality content that takes months of research to create. Thank you for watching until the end, and see you in the next adventure.